I know Daniel's here to talk to us about the Water Resources East process and the WRE plan, next steps, and our NFU chap who has a seat on as a director on Water Resources East, Lindsay Hargreaves, is also on the call and will be chipping in at some point as well. So over to you, please, Daniel and Catherine. Welcome.
Brilliant, Charles. Thank you very much. So Catherine's with me here today. So Catherine's our Principal Water Resources Specialist at Water Resources East, and in particular will be leading our work this year on agriculture. And yes, I'll leave time for you, Lindsay, to come in at the end. So there's a huge amount going on. I've got quite a lot of slides to go through. I'll go through them quickly. We'll circulate them afterwards. No need to take notes. And of course, really keen to pick up conversations with you all separately in terms of the overall regional plan, which we published as a kind of final version before Christmas. I'll talk about our new business plan, which we launched with members at our AGM in December, and also to talk about some of the flagship projects that are getting to quite exciting phases. We're actually getting into the delivery of solutions that support agriculture, as well as the environment and other abstractors. So lots to cover, so let's kind of get going. But first of all, in terms of Water Resources East, I'm sure people are aware of us now in terms of our constitution as an independent company, essentially an independent membership organisation that is funded by our board members. So yes, the water companies are involved, but they're in the minority on our board, and they are joined there by Lindsay on behalf of the NFU, Giles Bloomfield for the Association of Drainage Authorities. We've got councils represented across the region. We've got 2 environmental stakeholder directors, and we've also just recently welcomes Urban and Civic as a major master builder within the region, and the Oxford-Cambridge Pan-Regional Partnership, because I'm sure people are aware that it's Norfolk clearly is one of the centres of water scarcity and challenges for agriculture, for growth and other sectors, but Cambridge is hot on the heels now with lots of interest and activity going on to unlock some of the constraints that water scarcity is causing for growth ambitions. So independent, not-for-profit membership organisation, and we're looking to work really closely with the Water Food Group as itself gets set up as an independent body. The regional plan, as I mentioned, was published as our final version in December. It's available on our website. Hopefully people have had a chance to go on there. There's a launch webinar recording, which if you want to kind of watch it back. We published it, say, in mid-December. Lots of people joined the webinar, and this followed a draft plan that we published in November 2022. And we have fantastic feedback from our members, from our wider stakeholders on the draft plan, and hopefully there's been quite a lot of movement to improve the plan before the final version was published. The overall message, though, I would say hasn't changed a huge deal, because what the draft plan said and what our final plan confirmed is that water scarcity is a challenge in the here and now across the whole of the East of England, that we do need to change the way we plan for water resources and invest in more sustainable sources of supply. We've got a bigger deficit to deal with in our final plan than we had at the draft plan stage. We recognise within the plan that those constraints on growth for agriculture, for industry, for commercial space, for distribution centres, for all sectors of the economy are starting to bite, not only in Norfolk, but as I say, in Cambridgeshire as well as Suffolk, where there's already a moratorium on new non-household water consumption. And what our plan does is tries to identify the best value approach to resolving those public water supply deficits, but in ways that benefit all sectors. So our models explicitly take into account the needs of the environment, the needs of agriculture for irrigation, the needs of the energy supply for water use for cooling, and it finds options and solutions that optimise across a suite of multi-sector metrics. And as part of the technical delivery group, again, we have representation from across sectors to form and to shape our assumptions, to feed into models, and to express preferences as part of that modelling process. And what we're trying to achieve overall is, of course, is making sure that water scarcity is not a constraint on growth for any of the sectors that we work with. For the public water supply, we've been told by government we need to deliver increased drought resilience by 2040, and of course we want to see, as I'm sure everyone does, the highest improvements for the environment to restore rivers to good health, because that benefits everybody, and allowing abstraction, sustainable abstraction, to continue. This chart shows how much water we project will be needed both in 2025, which is our baseline year, and in future. I think the main point here is that it shows that agriculture, at least, is a really significant source and user of water, clearly, particularly during those irrigation seasons. And the numbers on this chart probably underplay how important agriculture is certainly to certain catchments at times of year, because this is an average. It's an average across the region, across the year, and it doesn't take into account those kind of fluctuations in abstraction demand that clearly happen from season to season and from year to year. But also just to recognise that the WRE is funded on the technical programme side by our water company members, and it's something we really want to address, and are having important conversations now with the Environment Agency and DEFRA to tap into new sources of funding. So our technical programme is fully multi-sector, and that future plans will recognise and help to resolve the deficits across all sectors, and not only for the public water supply. And for example, we've still not seen the data sets that I know Jerry Knox at Cranfield has been working on in terms of looking at kind of new projections of water requirements for types of irrigation and the amount of winter storage reservoirs that are already in place across the region. We also, again, as well as looking at what's happening on the demand side, how much water will be needed in future, our plan looks at how much water is available from existing water sources, particularly as and when abstraction reforms coming through in the short term, driven by the habitats regulations, the Water Framework Directive, as we've already heard from Steve, from Andy. Within our plan, we have shifted for the public water supply. We expect some of those license restrictions to come in sooner. But we also factor in what abstraction license reductions are likely for agriculture, certainly when we get into the medium to long term. So this environmental destination concept that Steve explained just a moment ago, the numbers on that side, again, haven't changed, because one of our early steps as part of this second round of regional planning, which is basically kicking off from now, is to look again at that question of environmental destination on a multi-sector basis, working really closely with the abstracted groups, with the Water for Food group, to understand what is the best way of improving the environment to restore more natural river flows, but in ways which deliver co-benefits for all sectors and avoid, as far as possible, abstraction reforms being necessary. Clearly, we're not going to avoid abstraction reform that is going to be necessary, but if we can avoid it through river restoration schemes, floodplain reconnection, investment in wetlands, attenuation features, and other kind of natural processes, then hopefully we achieve benefits for the environment, but also sustain productive agriculture in parts of the country where water scarcity is otherwise going to be quite a challenge. We present in our plan, again, a similar set of charts to the ones we did in the draft plan, showing what the implications might be for different parts of the region as a result of the environmental destination reforms being imposed. So across the top of this chart here, you've got the public water supply impacts, starting in the top left from the kind of least ambitious environmental improvements through to the top right, the most ambitious environmental improvements for the public water supply. And across the bottom, what that means for agriculture. So on the left, the least ambitious environmental improvements from an agricultural point of view, and the bottom right, the most ambitious. But I guess the main point here is there is still uncertainty here. That's why we need to commission more environmental destination investigations to really get a grip of what needs to be done at that local scale. But clearly there is significant reductions that would need to be required if we're going to return the environment to good health. And whilst the averages are quite stark, it will also be even more stark for individual abstractors in particular catchments where, clearly in parts of the region, there may need to be a kind of a full cessation of existing abstraction and a switch whole scale to winter storage, to water sharing, and to other means of tapping into alternative water supplies. So our regional plan overall, in geographic terms, spatial terms, is on the right-hand side. It still has the major components that we were talking about a year ago. So 2 major reservoir schemes in the Cambridgeshire Fens and in South Lincolnshire. Transfers moving water around the region to where it's needed most. We've got water reuse schemes, but because of additional ambition on the demand side from water companies, so higher leakage control, more ambitious demand side activity through smart metering and other kind of behaviour change initiatives, we think that our core pathway involves fewer desal plants, so fewer desal plants on the east coast, but certainly we think 3 desal plants at least will be necessary. And on the right, so on the left-hand side, lots has happened even in the last 12 months, which we factored into our final plan. So additional and early funding for water companies to invest in some of these schemes and to get it going. There's a new transfer of water indirectly from the West Country via Water Resources Southeast, which frees up water for Anglian Water to provide Cambridge Water. So a really nice interregional option which supports growth in Cambridgeshire. We looked again at prioritising our environmental improvements towards those habitats that need water most urgently. And we also have what we call adaptive pathways. So given, we're looking 25 years ahead, no one really knows what the future holds. And therefore, a set of kind of what if scenarios and adaptive pathways which show what decisions you might need to take by when if certain things unfold, like higher than expected levels of growth or higher, the most ambitious, say, returns to the environment needed to achieve good ecological status. And so just to kind of draw that, this first part of my presentation to a close, the regional plan is on our website. I hope people have had a chance to kind of skim through it. Really pleased to kind of pick up the details of it with people separately, but overall it shows how the scale of the deficit in the east of England can be met in ways which deliver benefits for all sectors. It has a set of low regret options which we hope water companies will be funded as part of this price review round to initiate straight away, including those 2 reservoir projects, as well as the kind of transfer schemes and smaller scale stuff. But an early stage and early priority for our next phase is those environmental destination investigations, which we have been making the case for to be fully multi-sector from the outset to meet the needs of all sectors in terms of their long-term planning requirements. And because we made recommendations a year ago, and I thought it'd be just worth taking a minute to return to them to show, I think, how much progress has been made since we made those recommendations at the draft plan stage in late 2022, through the efforts of Lindsay, through Kelly Houston Fisher, through the NFU, the team, people like Tom Bradshaw, obviously making this a political priority as well. I think it's fair to say there has been a huge amount of progress made in the last year with the Environment Agency and DEFRA, and making sure that agriculture does have a voice at the national table in making the case for kind of the planning for funding. And so just going to reflect on the recommendations here. So they have committed now to a second round of regional planning with a strong commitment to make sure that it is fully multi-sector and supporting the needs for agriculture, for energy, and the other major abstracting sectors. But we are talking now, actively with the Environment Agency and DEFRA about how the regional groups and the system more generally can be funded to make sure plans are brought forward on a fully multi-sector basis. And we recognise that this isn't a job for WRE. This is a job for the sector, but we stand ready to support the sector as they kind of upskill and get those plans together. The government has already accelerated the timetable for demand management options for the public water supply, which helps take the pressure off the environment and hopefully free up water for other sectors as well. We'll hear later, I think, from John about the further certainty that certainly we have been calling for to make it clear to abstractors what changes in licence conditions they can expect over the next 5, 10, 20 years. And as I've mentioned a few times, we're really keen to establish that single integrated approach to planning for environmental improvement across sectors. So the studies we commission can be done on a fully multi-sector basis, openly and transparently conducted and reported, to provide the data sets that the Water for Food Group, the individual abstractor groups, and individual abstractors can use to then plan on that long-term basis. And also, just in our final plan, I think the draft plan was all about agriculture in many ways, and our final plan reinforces those messages and brings in the kind of non-household consumption story, which is a really, that's where some of the constraints and growth are really coming through. We also made a set of recommendations explicitly for farmers and growers and for internal drainage bores as well, but they pick up on some of the things that Andy was saying earlier about streamlining the process by which reservoir options can be brought forward through the planning system and through the process of getting abstraction licenses approved for those new winter storage reservoirs. Funding to grow and develop and grow local abstractor groups. So as Andy said, not funding for the groups themselves in terms of actually establishing them and running them, but certainly funding to allow them to explore local resource options and to develop water resource management plans. And our recommendations echoed the Lowland Peat Task Force led by Robert Caldwell about the role of IDBs, which we think, particularly in the east of England, are really important to focus both on water resource management as well as flooding and drainage management. So that's the kind of water resource planning part of it. In terms of our business plan, as said, we're kind of at the end now with this first round of regional planning. Our business plan also came to an end, the first business plan at the end of 2023. So we took the opportunity at our annual general meeting to launch our new business plan, which members of the WRE have seen a couple of times and had the ability to comment on when it came out for consultation last summer. We've retained our vision as WRE as an organisation about making sure there's sufficient water resources to support a flourishing economy, a thriving environment, and to meet the needs of the population, including agriculture, clearly as part of that, and to be seen as an exemplar for integrated water management. And there's 5 strategic priorities, which are an evolution of the ones we had in our previous business plan. And just to talk about one of those, strategic priority 2, which I think is probably most relevant. Priority 1, priority 2 are really important for agriculture, but the words are really important here. And this is something we changed in response to feedback, is that we don't see it as our role to deliver catchment water resource management plans. Our role is to support catchment scale water resource management plans being developed by the sectors themselves, so that our role is capacity building. It's about providing data sets. It's about providing technical expertise through Kate, through Ben and the team, to support people like Steve, the abstractor groups and the water food group overall to deliver the plans that meet their needs. So we will support the group, but will not tread where we're not invited. So I'm really keen to work with Steve and the board of the emerging organisation to make sure the relationship between WRE and the water food group is as effective, as cooperative and collegiate as it possibly can be, because it's so important that the agriculture sector owns this problem and resolves this problem for itself in the way that it needs to. And our role is to support that process as clearly and effectively as we possibly can. But within our business plan, you can see the kinds of things that we think we can do. We can support the development of tools open to all that people can then apply in modelling their own situation, looking at particular catchments, understanding the impact of local resource options at the local and potentially the regional scale. We think we can support catchment partnerships through the catchment-based approach. And one of the projects we're getting underway now is to helping the catchment partnerships understand agricultural water resources needs, and maybe catchment partnerships are part of the answer to how maybe new water resource needs could be unlocked through nature-based solutions. There's a clear commitment from WRE to publish all data sets that we commission on behalf of all sectors. So the environmental destination investigations will be steered by all sectors and published for everyone's use and benefit. And as I'll talk about in a moment, one of the things we're really keen to do is accelerate our investment and everyone's investment in catchment and nature-based solutions as a way of delivering co-benefits through relieving pressures on the environment. And we've got a suite of catchment projects that are already up and running, and the list is growing all the time. And I think what I want to just kind of recognise, hopefully, is that first of all, that agriculture is a key sector in all but one of these flagship projects. And again, also in all but one of these projects, the focus is not just about water resources, but it's about water quality, it's about flood risk management, it's about these wider environmental co-benefits. And again, just to kind of talk about one of those potential projects and give you a sneak preview to a launch event that will happen in mid-February, that will be launching a business case for the Norfolk Water Fund. So we've had a Norfolk Water Strategy Programme in partnership with Anglian Water, Norfolk County Council, and the Nature Conservancy for some time. But we've been creating we want to launch a Norfolk Water Fund, which is a kind of basically like an investment vehicle, which brings together public funding, charitable, philanthropic funding, with and tapping into the new environmental markets around biodiversity net gain and nutrient neutrality to launch nature-based solutions at scale so they make a difference for water resources, water quality, for agriculture, for the environment and everybody else. And the types of things we're talking about, obviously, we talk about nature-based solutions all the time, but most of the time people invest in nature-based solutions from a kind of biodiversity and habitat creation point of view. Our interest is about water resources, water quality, and avoiding biodiversity loss and soil degradation, because we're driven by the agricultural interests as well as the environmental interests too. So the types of things we're talking about are runoff attenuation features, about soil management, about buffer strips and land use change. And what that means when you get to the types of mapping and modeling that we've been doing in the background is identifying the best measures and interventions to take in different parts of the catchment. And we've got opportunity maps now for the main catchments in Norfolk, where there's kind of chalk, where the chalk areas are, showing you, say, on the right-hand side, kind of explosion of different types of nature-based solutions which make sense to implement in different places. And having done that modeling, we've plugged it into a financial model which shows what you can achieve if you build a portfolio of around £30 million. And £30 million has been picked deliberately because that's how much money Anglian Water wants to invest in Norfolk and the Caminili Ouse in order to get nature-based solutions underway. And if you were to have funding of that scale, what kinds of options would you invest in, and where would you put them? And the pie chart on the right-hand side shows you a kind of balanced portfolio of nature-based solutions to achieve a mix of water quality, water resources, and biodiversity improvements for all sectors. And it also shows, our modelling shows, that there's very little land take involved, because we recognise one of the concerns is, well, are we just going to end up reforesting parts of East Anglia or changing everything over to grassland? Are we going to lose the ability for horticulture, for growers, for agricultural practices which produce food? But what these charts show is that for very small levels of land take, so the tiny red dots in the middle of our charts within the scope of the whole catchment, which are the grey circles, you've got very little land take, but with a very significant area of benefit. So hopefully what we're showing here is that the investment stacks up, it is cost beneficial. There is very little land take involved, but the area benefit far exceeds the scale of the direct intervention and nature-based solutions that we're taking. We're also starting up a new kind of nature-based front in Cambridge as part of the Cambridge Delivery Group process. So this is Michael Gove's long-term plan for housing, wants to see more ambitious housing and non-household kind of growth science parks, data centres. And we think nature-based solutions are part of the answer to a kind of overall water neutral strategy for Cambridgeshire. And runoff attenuation features provides a kind of sweet spot of really cost-effective interventions if you place them above permeable soils to help recharge the aquifer, and also delivering water quality and biodiversity gains. But again, with very little land take, because this is about interventions within the existing drainage system, corners of fields, field margins, not particularly productive land. And if you invest in the right places, then you can, our modelling shows, make a difference for groundwater, for infiltration, for Q95 flows, and therefore helping abstractors take water for longer during dry seasons, and also supporting the public water supply as well. And again, based on mapping that we have done, we've shown where in the catchment you would want to place these features to maximise the benefit. And essentially, it's on the boundary between the slightly higher ground in the brown topographical map on the left-hand side. It's where the brown meets the blue. So on the right-hand side, you can see the little pink dots, which, again, according to our mapping and modelling, suggest where you would want to place these kinds of features. And I'm partly just flagging it because we'd love to work with the NFU, with NFU members, to find landowners who would be willing to give this a go, because our modelling suggests that these features are really beneficial, but there's no field trials or kind of actual monitoring pilots which demonstrate that the models are real. And that's what we intend to do, install these features, put in monitoring plans, and establish and make the evidence base clear that these features do deliver the benefit that we expect, and they can therefore become a legitimate means for investing in nature-based solutions as part of a overall water neutral strategy. So next steps, just to wrap up. Sorry, I've probably gone on far too long, but there is, as I say, a lot's going on. First of all, really keen to support the Environment Agency, Water for Food Group, the abstractor groups in developing agricultural water resource management plans in that supportive capacity building, shaping and forming role. The catchment scale supply demand balances, the local resource options, and supporting the piloting of both those methodologies within Cambridgeshire. I mentioned a couple of times environmental destination investigations, getting them underway on a properly multi-sector basis, capturing multi-sector requirements. We have sought, as I say, funding to make sure those studies can be conducted on a multi-sector basis from the Environment Agency and from DEFRA. We want to commission with our water company members and with a kind of reformed agri-environment task and finish group some early pilots to actually test these methodologies and to make sure they are delivering and will deliver what every sector needs in terms of long-term data sets. And there's also projects underway within the Environment Agency and the UK Water Industry Research Programme, which is providing guidance for how environmental destination studies are being developed. And again, we're making the case for UPWR's work to be multi-sector and not only focus on what the public water supply companies need. As I say, mentioned scaling up investment in nature-based solutions for the Wensum, as well as the CAM, as I explained, and the Norfolk Water Fund business case. Both reservoir projects are getting to a really interesting phase now where they'll be launching master plans for the reservoir sites to show how they integrate into the wider landscape. WRE chairs the South Links Water Partnership and the Fens Water Partnership, making the case and championing the fact that these reservoirs do need to deliver benefits beyond just for the public water supply, integrated into the existing internal drainage boards network, delivering benefits in terms of flood risk management, providing water that could be available through kind of partnership agreements with local irrigators, and also using the existing open channel network to move water to the reservoir, which hopefully will open up opportunities for other abstractors to kind of tap into that water on its way through the catchment. Also, just to mention the WRE Drought Group, which Kate leads. Again, we'll be commissioning that this year to look into water sharing opportunities, mainly between water companies and agricultural users, so that to support irrigation during those dry seasons. Is there a means by which irrigators can tap into treated effluent from water companies, about managed aquifer recharge, through borehole rehabilitation schemes. So again, a collective platform, multi-sector, for working out how irrigation can be supported through dry seasons and drought. And lastly, again, as the Water for Food Group comes into its new phase to be established as an independent entity, then we're really keen to work out exactly how during this second round of regional planning we can work really effectively side by side and support both aims to make sure that regional planning and agricultural planning at a more local scale is as effective as it possibly can be.